On this video, we're going to be going over the book, The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. We're going to be going over the 4 agreements. We're going to talk about the 3 integration pieces that goes at the end of this book. I'm also going to give you my 5 life-changing lessons that I pulled from this book that you can actually go take action on. And then at the end of this video, I'm also going to give you kind of my hack to retain this information a lot deeper and a little bit of an audiobook and where I get the audiobooks and how I can really make this stuff stick deeper and deeper. What's up, guys? My name is Nico Rapkless. So glad to have you here on the YouTube channel where we talk about personal development, how to grow as a person and manifest that dream life that you're truly after. So if you're down with that, make sure and subscribe. We are on a 90-day kick to generate 20,000 YouTube subscribers so that we can help you become a magnetic manifester, the person that just draws things into their life and lives out their dream life. And that's exactly what our Skool Community is. So if you'd like to jump in there, we go live every week. We have a bunch of subconscious reprogramming audios, courses, and it's just a really powerful place to come network with some really incredible, amazing visionaries, manifestors, people that are looking to be the best version of themselves. So like I said, I like to make these review videos about these books so that you can take action on them and what I pulled out of them, not necessarily just what's actually in this book, but how you can apply it and how I can take the wisdom that I pulled from it and apply it to your life. Okay, so let's dive through this. What are the 4 agreements first and foremost? What are those integration pieces that they talk at the end of this book? And then we'll dive into the 5 life-changing lessons that I pulled from it, and then also share with you like my little hack to retain this information a lot deeper. Okay, so what are the first 4 agreements? What are the 4 agreements? So the first one is be impeccable with your word. And this one's so powerful. I'm going to dive much deeper into this one. It's going to be one of the big lessons that I learned from this. But, I think about this, about the fact that our words are just an indicator of what our thoughts are. And our thoughts are really the starting point to manifestation, to whatever our life is going to create. And that's really what manifestation is. It's just creation, right? And so the way I always like to explain this is that manifestation, the process of creation, is just like the process of creating a plant, right? How's that become a plant? You plant the seed, you nurture the seed, and that seed sprouts, right? That's exactly how manifestation happens. That's how creation happens. And so it all starts with your thoughts. And then your words are just an indicator of what your thoughts are. So if you be intentional with the words that you are using, you be impeccable with the words that you're using, naturally your life's just going to get better. We'll go much more into depth on that one, but that is the first agreement. So the second agreement is don't take anything personally. And I've learned a lot of lessons throughout this one. This is a really powerful one, but I'll share probably a quick little story here. When I started my podcast event company, we had hundreds of people coming to our podcast events, and that was amazing, right? And people would come up to me after the podcast event and give me a lot of praise and say how amazing I was, and that was great. But then it started being a little bit overwhelming, and I asked a friend of mine what he thought about getting a lot of compliments, because he was kind of in a similar situation as me. And he said that I don't really care what people say about me in terms of give me compliments, because it ultimately has nothing to do with me and everything to do with them, right? And so that comes here with don't take anything personally, because what they say about you doesn't really have anything to do with you. It has everything to do with them. If they're giving you a compliment, that means that they see a piece of them, or they see something that they like in you that reflects them. And vice versa, if they are saying something poorly about you, it's just because they see something in you, they have a reflection of themselves, and it's something internal going on with them and why they would be upset with you, right? So that's number 2, don't take anything personally. Number 3, don't make assumptions. This is so important. And we're going to dive into a little bit more about this and what I pulled from this. But when you're making assumptions and you're not having that clear communication with somebody, you really don't know the story. Now we could talk about intuition versus insecurity, and that's what I'll dive into here. Is actually one of the things that I really pulled from this book is, you really don't know. You don't know until you know, right? And so if you're making assumptions, oh, that person doesn't like me, or that person, thinks I'm terrible, or whatever it is, you really don't know. Right? You don't know until you go have that tough conversation. And that's something that's been massively impactful for me, is just going and having the tough conversations. having the tough conversation, even though they're just little things. And what's interesting that I've really noticed, even had another conversation yesterday, where I was a little hesitant to bring it up. I was like, this is a little uncomfortable. I'm not sure if I want to bring this up. But I brought it up, had a good conversation around it, cleared the air, and then I was like, that's what I was kind of concerned about. Like, that was a really easy conversation. But in the beginning, my mind really built it up. So the more that you can step in and have those tougher conversations, it just clears everything up, and then therefore you don't have to make assumptions, and then things can go, like, if you start making assumptions, things can really start going haywire. I've learned that personally. If I'm just like, oh, that person did this because they don't like me, and it really, again, comes back to don't take anything personally, but then also don't make assumptions. Go to the source, have the conversation, snuff it out, boom. And then one of the other things that I really like doing, that's what we do inside the Skool community, is that we do energetic clearings. So even if you don't want to necessarily have that conversation, you feel like you can clear it out without having the conversation, you got to energetically clear it out. And we have plenty of those type of resources inside of the Skool community. So again, go check it out. All right, number 4. Number 4, the fourth agreement is always do your best, right? Always do your best. Because I guess this probably parlays into a lot of the stuff that we're talking about with these 4 agreements already. But like, if you're worried about, you're making assumptions about this person, or thinking that this is what they said, or you're taking things personally, when you are doing those things, you're simply just focused outward. You're focused on other people. You're concerned with what's going on outside of you, right? But if you just always focus on doing your best, then you got everything taken care of. You don't need to worry about like assuming things. You don't need to worry about taking things personally, because you're just focused on doing your best. And I have a big key component to that point that I think is really important that I'll share with you here in a second. But I want to get into I would say the integration pieces that are on top of the 4 agreements, which is be aware of your harmful agreements. Okay, be aware of your harmful agreements that are not necessarily the agreements that you're upholding with the 4 agreements. So that really comes to awareness. We'll talk about that here in a second. Number 2 is the power of forgiveness. I can't tell you how many times, I even had an experience recently where there was 2 people I was very upset at. And one of my coaches actually told me that, what if you went up to them and just said, even though you feel like they're in the wrong, what if you went up to them and said, I forgive you? And I was had so much resistance to that, but I was like, that probably would free me up quite a bit. And so it's literally a power move, is forgiveness. And I'll dive into that here in a second. So the last one though, and I think this is so important, and this gives us almost this urgency of life and how we can really start living life with more zest, right? And just remembering that every day can be our last. Life is fragile. It really is. It could be gone in an instant. I've seen it time and time again. So understand that every day could be your last and can be your last, because you got to remember that there are people that did not wake up today that thought they were going to. There are people that went to bed last night thinking that they were going to wake up, and they did not. So remember that, and don't take any day for granted, and know that any day could be your last. So let's dive into my 5 big life-changing lessons from all this after we've obviously discussed the 4 agreements here. So one thing, and this is kind of an interesting, I don't know why exactly this came to me and why this was the specific one, but I thought this was just really, really important and really valuable, is that you have poison at your disposal. I know that might sound kind of weird, but think about that. Coming back to be impeccable with your word. Okay, think about your thoughts. Like we talked about before, is that negative thoughts or low vibrational thoughts or thoughts of fear, they're literally poison, right? If you just keep on dumping those into your mind, you keep on speaking those out, that literally can create fear, that can create worry, that can create anxiety in your life. So you literally have poison at your disposal, and most times it's for you, because in the beginning chapter of this book, it talks about if you were to treat someone else the way you treat yourself, they would not want nothing to do with you, right? When you make a mistake, our minds keep on replaying that over and over and over and over and over again. I don't know if you can relate to that, but I can. Lots of friends that I know have shared that with me, clients, people in our Skool community, if you keep on ruminating on the things, it just continues to seep deeper and deeper and putting more poison in your life. And again, that comes back to the concept of forgiveness. Forgiveness is like carrying around poison, like drinking poison and thinking it's going to hurt the other person if you're not forgiving. But when you forgive, you let go of that poison. You just let it go. And so the more that you can speak powerful words, the more that you can think faith-based thoughts as opposed to fear-based thoughts, and you just keep a one mind instead of two minds of faith and fear, where you're ping-ponging back and forth and you just focus on faith, that's when you lose the poison. So I thought that was a really, really powerful point, is to remember that you have poison at your disposal. It's just, do you want to get rid of it, or do you want to keep on drinking it in, right? So coming back to point number two is that, my point number two is that words are an indicator of what your thoughts are. So it's a lot easier to direct your words than it is to direct your thoughts, because we have what they say, like 50 to 70,000 thoughts per day. That's a lot. How are you supposed to keep track of them? Most of them are subconscious, so that's why it's really important to reprogram your subconscious. If you're not experiencing the life that you truly desire, it's all about reprogramming your subconscious. And we have some really powerful tools inside of the Skool community. One is called Vision Espresso. That's actually a custom guided meditation from yourself, from your future self, that's actually in your voice. That's all based on your goals and your dreams and your vision. It's a really powerful tool. Obviously, you can check out more information about that inside of the Skool community, or there's a link below. But understand that all those thoughts are in your subconscious, and they're repetitive thoughts. But just remember that it's easier to navigate your words than it is to navigate your thoughts. And when you're more impeccable with your word, then it creates a better thought process, right? And then therefore you're not holding on to that poison. You're letting go and you're focused more on faith rather than the ping pong match of faith and fear. I even got this tattoo. It says abracadabra, and in Hebrew it's translated to, as I speak, I create. So literally it's the first agreement is be impeccable with your word. Whatever you speak is what you are creating. Whatever you speak, you're manifesting into your life. So it just depends on what are you speaking. And I had a friend that told me a few years ago, he said, when you live intentionally, nothing is random. When you realize this, you realize that whatever you speak, whatever it starts with, those thoughts, those seeds, those sprout out, right? So be intentional, be impeccable with your words, because that is just simply an indication of what your thoughts are, and it's a lot easier to direct your words than it is your thoughts, okay? Now, as I mentioned before, when we're talking about don't take anything personally, what I want to touch on is this whole concept of intuition versus insecurity, because I've gone through my journey with this whole process of don't take anything personally, don't make assumptions. But here's the other thought process, is that I've become very intuitive and I can read people very quickly. I tend to know things that are going on even before people tell me things, right? So when that kind of comes back to saying oh, it is, if you do have that kind of gift, and I think we all do, the more that we become more aware, and that's going to be another thing that I want to talk about here. Yeah, awareness, right? I talked about it in be aware of your harmful agreements, and so that's why it's really, really important to meditate, do weekly reflections, do journaling, so you just become more aware of those harmful agreements. But you also start just becoming more aware. You're more tapped into God, you're more tapped into source, and then you can really start identifying things and seeing things that most people can't when you get rid of the clutter, right? But then this comes back to this concept of intuition versus insecurity. And if you are not like I talked about before, is you go have the conversation, you clear things up. But sometimes you don't want to go have that conversation, or even that conversation isn't really feasible. And sometimes you just want to avoid that energy as a whole because you're intuitive, I don't want to be around that, right? So what's the difference of intuition versus insecurity? And so intuition, you'll get these downloads and see these things, and there will be a peace around it. It's not I can't go talk to this person, or I gotta go talk to this person and they wronged me. when you're triggered, when there's intense emotions around that is insecurity. When it's intuition, it's just like, oh, that person doesn't want to talk to me, or that person, it's not meant to be. And when there's peace around this, and I think it's a continual practice, but when there's peace around it, you'll realize that it's intuition. When it's insecurity, it's more you get all riled up. You're triggered in some capacity. So the more emotionally intelligent you are with that, the more you're going to start being able to read that. And obviously this can take time. We can obviously talk more about this inside of our lives, inside of the Skool community. So again, feel free to join that. That's where a great place for us all to connect and talk more in depth about these type of nuances. Okay. And then lastly, point number 4 is when you're talking about always do your best, right? And that's a really valuable one. You're focused on yourself and you're focused on doing your best. And the thing that I think really comes back to this, and this is absolutely essential and imperative, is that in order to do your best, you got to be at your best, right? Meaning you got to take care of yourself, right? You can't just be, going to bed at 2 a.m., waking up early, not feeding yourself well, and not meditating daily, calming the mind, working out. Like, really take care of that body, right? Really take care of your mind, your mental health, your spiritual health, your physical health, everything. Because until you are at your best, you're running on a low battery, right? And I think sleep is one of the biggest, most important things. That's what I talk a lot about with my clients, and it's something that I've navigated a lot too, is that when I'm not sleeping good, that means that I'm at a lower battery, right? Think about your phone. When it's at a 7% battery, it's not operating as well. So how do you get your battery up to 100% as consistent as possible? Because until you are operating at a higher level of battery, you can't really do your best. So that's even before you come into doing your best. You got to be at your best, and you got to give yourself the opportunity to do your best because you are at your best. So, and then I already actually got to point number 5, is that the awareness, right? You got to be able to know things. You got to be able to see things. You got to be able to calm the mind. We talk a lot about this as well, as like the reason that you want to meditate, you want to do breath work, and you want to do those type of things is that it calms the nervous system. Because until you calm the nervous system, you regulate the nervous system, it's going to be a little bit tough to really start manifesting things and start creating that life that you truly desire, because you're frazzled, right? And then again, the more aware you become, the more you can read things, the more tapped in you are, and the more you can tap into your intuition rather than making assumptions and taking things personally. So the more calm you are, the more meditative you are, the more that the 4 agreements just come into factor, and more naturally, I should say. So trust all that makes sense. Trust all that gave you a lot of value on top of just reading this book. And that's really the intention behind these book reviews, is that I want to give you a way to really understand the stuff, pull some stuff out, take action on them so that you can really start applying this to your life, because to know and not to do is simply to not know. So go take action on these things instead of just reading books, because you can get stuck in that. Now, one last thing, if you are wanting to go read this book, that I strongly recommend that you actually listen to the audiobook while reading the physical copy. And so one of the best places that I love to listen to the audiobook is on Spotify. So if you have a Spotify premium account, which I personally do, and I know a lot of people do because they like listening to music on there, but then you can actually listen to the audiobook as well. So a little hack, and it helps me retain these things a lot more. And then the last thing I'll tell you as well, if you can teach someone, just like what I'm doing, I'm sharing a video. If you can teach somebody something a little bit about what you learned about this, it's going to help you seep that deeper and deeper into your beautiful subconscious. So that's a wrap for the 4 agreements. I trust that gave you a lot of value. Go apply that type of stuff. And then again, guys, if you would like to join us inside of the Skool community, where we dive a lot deeper on how to manifest your dream lifestyle, then go ahead and join us inside of the Magnetic Manifesting Skool community. Make sure and subscribe to the YouTube channel, as we're on our mission to generate 20,000 magnetic manifestors subscribers here on this channel in the next 90 days of making these 90 videos in 90 days. And then also you can follow me over on Instagram. Get all tapped in with everything we got. We got some cool audios and everything, as I mentioned, with the Vision Espresso and a lot of other things coming down the pipeline. So thank you for watching this video, guys. Appreciate you, and we'll see you on the next one.